think we have enough people to get started. It's already after 9 o'clock, so let's see if we can get this show rolling. Good morning. Welcome to the Energy and Utilities and Telecommunications Committee for today, February 25th. First order of business, if we're ready to go, is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Representative Depple, Representative Gardner, second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Minutes approved. Okay. Today we have some final action on some bills previously heard. We have HB 2329. What is the committee's? Is that a motion by Representative Schreiber? Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion on the bill? Advisor, Nick, would you like to give us, this will be final action on 2329. Nick, would you like to give us a cover on that?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Chair. So Nick Myers with the Revisor's Office. Committee House Bill 2329 would amend two statutes relating to pipeline safety rules and regulations and penalties that may be assessed by the KCC for violations. The bill would add that operators of gathering lines, as defined in a federal regulation, would be subject to the pipeline safety regulations, and it would remove a provision excluding certain activities relating to farming and oil and gas production. It would also increase the penalties, I think, as you heard in testimony, to more closely match federally provided penalties. And that's I'll stop there and answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Anybody have any questions for Nick? Seeing none. Any amendments to this bill? Seeing none, we'll move forward to approve. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion? Is there a motion to move this out favorably for Representative Schreiber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we move House Bill 2329 favorably.
Any discussion? I have a second.
Second.
Excuse me, someone say something? Representative Clark?
Second.
Or Smith? You have to state your name if you're saying it viral, because I can't see you. Representative Samsel, did you have?
If you already have a second, Mr. Chair, my apologies. I was just saying I second the motion.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. Annie, did you have a question? Representative Keither, I mean? See Representative Carmichael's face here. Is Representative Carmichael, did you have a question?
No, Mr. Chairman, this is a fine bill. I'm looking forward to voting for it.
Okay, well, hopefully we don't have any communications problems here, so okay. Representative Schreiber, you may close.
I close.
All those in favor of moving? Somebody say something? Okay. All those in favor of moving it out in favor of the passage, say aye. All those opposed? Good one, Mr. Carmichael. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that my affirmative vote be recorded? Representative Carmichael?
You can ask.
I am asking.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Carmichael. Your vote will be recorded as a nay.
As an aye, Mr. Chairman.
As an aye, okay. All right. All right. Thank you, sir. Next on the list, final action on Bill 2367. Nick, would you give us an overview of that, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So Committee House Bill 2367 would provide that any entity that is exempt from the jurisdiction of the Kansas Corporation Commission pursuant to 66104E would not be exempt from the wire stringing requirements that are in statute in 66183. And if you remember, there's an exemption in 66104 that exempts facilities from public utility regulation if they were constructed on or after January 1, 2001, and they're not in the rate base of any electric public utility. And again, this bill would provide that exemption does not apply and does not exempt those utilities from the wire stringing requirements found in statute.
Any questions for Nick? Representative Keither? Representative Keither, can you hear us? Since we lost contact, I guess we'll move on. Any amendments to this? Last call for any amendments to this? And if you're viral or virtual or whatever you want to call it, and Representative Neighbors?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Representative Kiefer speak because her voice went out.
Oh, okay.
Not my voice. I just wanted to speak to the history behind this. I mean, I appreciate why this was brought forward, but instead of putting this in statute today, I would suggest that we ask the people who are concerned about this and brought it forward to work with other entities before they come front with legislation that they did not have any say in. The KCC did not talk and communicate with the Alliance and just went ahead and brought the bill forward. It was my understanding that any communication could have been done without legislation. So I would suggest that maybe we give the KCC and the Alliance a year to work this out before we put it in statute. This is a bill that's good for 2 years. So that's just my 2 cents this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have a recommendation to move over the bill then or anything like that?
I didn't hear it. What do you
Do you have a recommendation?
Hmm?
Do you have a recommendation?
Well,
Here.
you there?
Would you like to
Just a
make an
minute,
amendment
Mr.
to
Chairman.
move it?
No, don't worry about it. It's going to go anyway.
Representative Gardner?
Well, just following up, thank you, Mr. Chairman, on Representative Keither's point.
I'm back up now.
I guess, can I ask why this bill was brought forward without discussion with the entities involved? May I?
I would guess that they had their opportunity when we had the hearing on it to come forward if they had questions. And anybody else care to address that? Nick, would you have any questions on that or answers for that?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman. I think you would have to inquire with the parties involved.
I don't think we can do that at this point during the working stage. That would have been during the hearing stage if they had questions and wanted to present on it, wouldn't it? I guess we can vote the bill down. I mean, I don't know. There's kind of unusual procedure here when we're working a bill to have questions about how it was done, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there might be another option would be to make a motion to table the bill until.
That's why I asked Annie if she wanted to.
Well, I'm just thinking maybe that's an option. If we're uncomfortable and want more information, we could do that. But
Good. Someone has to make the motion, not me.
I understand that.
Would you like to make that motion?
No, I think I'm going to pass.
Is there a motion to table the bill?
Mr. Chairman, here's Annie.
Okay.
Oh, boy, this is nuts. Mr. Chairman, we could table the bill, or we could just not take any action, and it will be remain in committee.
I mean, as far as not taking any action, not have a vote on it?
I'm sorry. You'd
As
rather
far
have
as-
a vote on it one way or the other?
Well, that's why I was asking for Nick what we can do at this point. You know, we either have to have a motion to table it or to work it, I believe, and either pass it forward or pass it down. Nick, can you help me with that question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's the will of the committee. You could table it, you could take action on it, or you could not take action on it and let it sit. I believe this bill would be subject to the deadlines. It's not an exempt bill, so it would be subject to the deadlines this year, but it would remain in committee for next year.
Is there a motion to table the bill?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Who is this?
Representative Samsel.
Okay, Representative Sansel.
I don't know that I've heard any substantive objection to the bill. I would actually, if the time's right, make a motion to pass this out favorably. But with that said, is the committee meeting again if we were to wait on this for a few days to have a conversation?
No, tomorrow's the last day, and I think we're calling the chair. We don't meet on Fridays, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of that, then, the hearing opportunity is already passed. So I understand the good representative's concerns, but I would offer a motion to pass this out favorably.
Is there a second to that? Seeing a second, Representative Smith? All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed?
No.
It sounded like minnow. Does that mean no?
There were 2 noes.
2 noes?
Uh-huh.
Okay, okay. All the ayes have it unless you want your vote recorded. Representative Carmichael, do you want your vote recorded, or Annie, or Representative Neighbors? No? Okay.
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. HB 2367 was moved out, passed favorably for passage. Representative Schreiber, would you like to close? Say aye.
Close.
Okay.
After the vote.
All right. Next on the agenda is HB 2321. Nick, would you give us a rundown of 2321, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Committee House Bill 2321 relates to the construction of urban electric transmission lines in cities of a size of 300,000 or more. And committee, as the bill is structured, it would require cities to notify, utilities constructing these lines to notify a city. If they are constructing a line that is at least 2.5 miles through the corporate limits of the city, that's 69 kilovolts up to 230 kilovolts of electricity. The notice would have to be done 6 months in advance to the city and provide preliminary plans and some visual examples of the proposed construction. The bill as written right now would also provide statutory authority for a city having that population size to exercise zoning or siting jurisdiction, authority or control over the construction of these urban electric transmission lines within their city limits. And the provisions would not apply for construction or repair of these lines if the line is happens to have damage caused by natural causes or other physical damage to the line. And Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the provisions of the bill.
Thank you, Nick. Does anybody have any questions for Nick? Anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Representative Carmichael, my hand is up.
Okay, Representative Carmichael.
Thank you. Does this bill relate to cooperatives or municipally owned and operated utilities?
I'm sorry, hold on just a second. We're having technical difficulty here. Trying to get the hand signs from everybody here so we can see. There we go. All right, what was your question, Representative Carmichael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Myers, does this bill impact cooperative utilities or municipally owned and operated utilities? Or is it just limited to investor-owned utilities?
Yeah, so Representative Carmichael, I think you're thinking, and you know the answer. It only applies to investor-owned electric utilities. The definition is provided in the bill of an electric utility, and an electric utility does not mean any municipal utility or any electric cooperative utility. So,
thank you, Mr. Myers. I just wanted to make sure I had not missed something, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Keither, do you have a question?
No, she doesn't have a question. She'll take her hand up.
Okay, I finally get my thing to work and it shows her hand up. So Representative O'Halverson.
Oh, can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, sorry about that. Question for Mr. Myers. With respect to this bill, I'm just trying to understand it. It's pertaining to cities over 300,000 people. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
I would
yes.
believe that, but I'll let Nick answer that.
Yes, it is. And as we discussed in the hearing or during the hearing day of this bill, that would be Wichita.
Okay, so my question is, if there is lines that are going to be constructed, say for instance, from Wichita outside of city limits, say maybe north, south, anywhere, any city that is under 300,000, this particular utility company doesn't necessarily have to notify that city it's going into. Is that correct? Say for instance, if it's going from Wichita into Park City.
When I do it down there, it says.
Hello?
I think Representative Neighbors has her speaker on.
Oh. So in other words, my question is, cities that are outside, let's say within Cedric County, that are less than 300,000, the utility companies are not required to notify the cities that it's going into. Is that my understanding? But they can only have to notify Wichita. Is that fair to say?
Nick, can you answer that?
Certainly. Yes. So this would only apply within if a line is constructed that is 2.5 miles through the corporate limits of that city of having a population of 300,000. So if there's a 2.5 mile line constructed within Wichita, having the 69 up to 230 kilovolt size limit, that the notification would have to happen within that city. This does not apply to any other cities below that population size of 300,000.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You forgot to mention my district on the west side of Wichita. Representative Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Nick. It's not a prediction, but the fact that this is not a uniform law across the state, but is specific to a certain area or a certain situation, does the the charter ordinance capacity of cities, does that apply to being able to charter out from it if a Wichita government chose to do so?
Yes, and Kansas is a home rule state, and any laws that apply non-uniformly to cities, it's my understanding they could charter ordinance out of it.
And again, that is not a prediction or something that I've heard, but knowing that it's not uniform, the home rule seems like it would be a capacity in the future. Thank you.
Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a clarification on Representative Hobson's questions. Even though the notification protocol that's in this bill doesn't apply below cities of 300,000, the utilities still do their notification procedures just as they've done in the past. And I wouldn't be surprised that, some of these don't flow through their whole operations just to keep consistent. But it's not that cities below 300,000 don't get notified if there's a rebuild or a new transmission line going in. I just wanted to make that clear that there's still notifications going on.
Thank you, Representative Schreiber.
Did that answer your question, Representative Halverson? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'm sorry, my mic was off. Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, any amendments to this bill? Representative Del Verdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple amendments here. Somebody to help.
Would you care to explain your amendment?
I'll go through the amendment while they're being passed out. Thank you. First one here, and I'll start it off with this is a negotiated compromise between some parties involved here, including the one that brought this bill originally. But it adds some language to provide notice to the proposed construction of landowners and tenants of records within 660 foot of the center line of any easements, and to the governing body of the city and the state corporation commission. And it also requires the utility to conduct an open house in the city through which the lines will traverse, and allows the landowners who receive the notice of the open house to provide comment regarding the proposed constructions in there. Also goes down, just strikes a little bit of the language on lines 29 through 33, just cleans up the bill a little bit. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Representative Carmichael has questions.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you. Could we have the amendment distributed electronically via email or displayed on the screen so that we have an opportunity to see it? And in the meantime, my question for the carrier of the amendment, is this the amendment which strikes city's authority through zoning and otherwise to prevent, if need be, the construction of these types of lines like Evergy did in Wichita?
Yeah, that is the part that is struck. Yes, specifically lines 29 through 33 of the bill.
And on what page, sir?
It says 2-10 on here, but the overall bill is only a couple of pages long there. So I would say page 1 of the bill that we see.
Well, hold on just a second if you can. Nick, would you be able to put that on the screen for us instead of your picture maybe?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and I believe I sent it to Barbara as well, so that she's got the amendment and hopefully can forward it on if you so choose. But I will put it up on my screen here in just a second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. While we're waiting for that, any other questions? Representative Turner?
That's not, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question, but it was emailed out on the 18th of February. So it's in everybody on the committee's email box dated 2/18. Came from Barbara Moore. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you able to find that, Mr. Carmichael? Here it comes, I think.
The answer is no, but I see it on my screen now. If I can have just a moment, then I would like to address the amendment on the merits, assuming it has received a second.
Is there a second?
There's a second.
Second?
I second it.
By Representative Berkowitz. Any discussion on the amendment?
I do have discussion at your convenience, Mr. Chairman.
We're all waiting for you, Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Putting this amendment on the bill makes the bill not worth passing. This amendment substitutes an open house for citing authority by the municipality and its zoning commission. It also strikes the $300,000 or 300,000 population limitation as well. Here's the sad situation. Evergy is not KG&E. Evergy is controlled in part by a company called Elliott Management. Elliott Management has made it very clear that they want to improve shareholder return on investment, or they want the company sold or merged. And it is not the fault of the people that we see in this building who are good folks from Evergy, that what occurred in Representative Finney's district and what could occur in your district tomorrow is happening. But please understand, if we take away the citing authority of the governing body, which is provided for in the original bill, whether you represent Topeka in the Oakland area or whether you're from Emporia, there is no prohibition under Kansas law to keep Evergy from doing the same thing to your neighborhood that they did to Representative Finney's neighborhood. Now, I have heard statements by Evergy's representative at the time this bill was heard that the KCC somehow retains some type of citing authority. But as we heard from the engineer from the KCC, that is not the case. The only tangential relationship between the KCC and the citing of these lines is that theoretically, if the utility built a line that was unnecessary, then the cost of that line might not be allowed to be placed in Evergy's rate base. But if this amendment is put on this bill, Evergy has the right of eminent domain, and the city cannot stop it, and the KCC cannot stop it. That means that they can put a pole in your front yard, a tower 105 foot tall, and pay you for the diminution to your property value and the use of your land under the eminent domain laws. But if you live next door, you get nothing. If you live across the street, you get nothing. And your property value declines precipitously because nobody in their right mind would pay full value to live next door to a 105 foot power pole or to look out their front window across the street. This is an important matter of individual property rights, and it's a matter of local control. This amendment is bad. The bill is good, but if this amendment is put on, we are substituting an open house hosted by Evergy, where a KCC member will be present but can't do anything about it, for the power of local government to tell Evergy no. So I cannot support this amendment, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the committee listening to my thoughts this morning. Thank you, sir.
Representative Carmichael. Representative Keither, your hand is up.
Okay, here comes Representative Keegan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really didn't want to get in the middle of this bill. This is something that has been agreed upon between Evergy and the local representative. But I have to agree with Representative Carmichael. Stripping local control is not a direction I would want to ever go. And so I do not support this amendment and appreciate the opportunity to say so. And I hope the representative who made this agreement with Evergy can get the bill she wants. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this amendment? Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, I just speak to the amendment itself. You know, I think the parties have been working on this quite diligently, and I applaud both sides on coming together. It's taken a while, but I think they've reached a good compromise here. Having the presence of a KCC commissioner at a hearing, at a open house, is a great step. It's not that they're prevented from other citing hearings, but certainly their presence through the statute being there at the open house is an important step. And I think, you know, the scrutiny that's been on this project has strengthened this ability to make sure there's public notice and public participation. So I would be supportive of this compromised agreement that's been worked out. Thank you.
Representative Samsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the reviser, if I may. Nick, can you help me understand the comments were made about local control and what, if anything, it is stripping here? I understand the good representative's comments. I'm trying to make sure I fully understand that, though.
I don't know if I'm the best one to answer that unless you got kind of a more specific question for me.
Yeah, that's fair. It was not a good question. And I guess Mr. Chair, if I may redirect that to Representative Carmichael, what language in the bill am I looking at as to taking away local control?
Representative Carmichael, would you like to answer that?
I would be happy to, although I do not have the amendment before me. It is the language, I think, at page 1, roughly lines 28 through 29, where the strike appears. Original bill provides that in cities of 300,000 where the other requirements are met, that local government has siting authority through their planning and zoning authority. If we strike that language, then local government no longer has, well, they don't have it right now, but they would not have it under this bill because the amendment takes that authority away from local government under the bill. I hope that that is correct. And I would also ask Mr. Myers, with the chair's permission, if the strike at the bottom of page 1 removes the authority of local government to regulate the siting of lines which otherwise fit the descriptions of the bill, if that's what that strike does.
Would you care to answer that? So your question, if I understand it, the balloon part with the box you're okay with, but it's the strike portion of the bill that you're questioning on the amendment. Is that right, Mr. Carmichael?
Honestly, I haven't looked carefully at what's in the box, but I am directing Mr. Myers and the committee's attention to the strike of the paragraph that contains the 300,000 limitation and the strike of the siting authority through local zoning, That's what I'm focusing on.
Okay. Nick, do you understand the question?
Certainly. And Representative Samsel, your second question, clarified that for me. Yes, committee, the discussion that you're hearing is centering around that striking of the original bill's subsection D. And what that subsection would have done is it would have allowed the governing body of any city over 300,000 to have authority to exercise zoning or siting jurisdiction over the construction of urban electric transmission lines. Now, the definition that remains in the bill for urban electric transmission lines still applies under the balloon, would still apply this balloon to city sizes of 300,000 or more. So the notice requirements to a city and the open house requirements that are being proposed by this balloon would be required in those same city sizes. But this balloon strikes that subsection D, which would have granted cities authority to exercise zoning and siting jurisdiction.
And Mr. Myers is correct, Mr. Chairman. I did misspeak regarding the 300,000 limitation, and I apologize.
One brief follow-up question, Mr. Chair, if I may, for the reviser. Under home rule authority, do cities not already have that authority anyway, or has that been taken away from them by statute, either through this amendment or the bill or somewhere else?
Well, I think you've heard the discussion about the eminent domain issue that utilities possess and their exercise of eminent domain. And I think that's kind of where the discussion centers upon. And I'm not aware of any other authority that's granted to cities to exercise siting jurisdiction over the construction of transmission lines.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The only, and if I may, and I don't know if this will clarify anything, the only authority with regard to siting transmission lines, specific transmission line siting in statute applies to transmission lines that are 230 kilovolts or more, that are 5 miles in length or more. And that falls under the KCC's siting process.
Well, and this, I guess, Mr. Chair, if I may, my ignorance is going to show here, but I have some heartburn when I hear that some groups are able to exercise eminent domain and take away private property rights. But if that's already the status quo and normal anyway, maybe I don't have as much heartburn with that. But certainly anytime government, or especially if it's not 100% of government entities taking away private property rights, that gives me some heartburn. But again, I'm showing my ignorance in asking this question. Is that anything, Nick? I know we've put you on the spot a lot this morning, but is that something that they already have before we got into this bill?
Did cities already have that authority? Is that the question?
Well, and I think it's not even the city that's doing it here, right? For the exercise of eminent domain.
Oh, I see. The utility.
Correct.
Yes, that's a statute that's been around for a long, long time.
Thank you. That helps.
Representative Schreiber.
Yeah, this might be a little redundant from what Nick just told you, Representative Samsel, but the KCC has had that authority, the siting authority for transmission lines throughout the state, 230 of them and above, and more than 5 miles in length. And all public utilities are provided through the KCC the right of eminent domain wherever their territory is. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. That is helpful. And I guess I could be wrong, but it seems to alleviate some of my concern that we're really taking away something. It seems like maybe it never existed, but for the amendment. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, with your leave, an additional question for the reviser.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Myers, as I understand it, under present law, the for-profit private utility has the right of eminent domain in cities irrespective of their size and irrespective of the length of a line or the capacity of a line. However, as I understand it, the original bill would restrict that right in cities of 300,000 lines of 2.5 miles or less, voltages between, I think it's 64 and 230 kV, which means the original bill would allow a city to say, to, in essence, prevent the private for-profit utility from using their eminent domain power in those circumstances. But if we put the amendment on this bill, as I understand it, Mr. Myers, the law will remain the same in Kansas, meaning that the private utility can put the pole in my neighbor's front yard and the city can't do anything to stop it. Do I understand that correctly?
So 26-101, KSA 26-101 provides that eminent domain authority to corporations holding a certificate of convenience issued by the State Corporation Commission. That would remain. This provision would, under the amendment, would go away. That was attempting, or was an attempt, I guess, or under the bill, would have granted cities with authority to exercise zoning and citing jurisdiction. And I think that's about all I can add there.
I appreciate the position the revisor is in, and I do appreciate the revisor's good advice, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to give comment to the thought that this amendment takes any power away from this original bill. The original bill, as written, as has been acknowledged, would put the city into the role of regulator with veto authority, which would be a new power, and I think one that would be ill-advised. But to me, this remaining with this amendment reflects the lessons learned from this experience. It ramps up transparency. It defines who the impacted populations are for notification and involvement in the process. And as has been said by Representative Schreiber, this was agreed on or agreed to by both parties. And I think it's a reasonable measure as amended, and I support it as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. One last scan for any other hands. Seeing none, Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will just point out again, for the benefit of those that cannot see this, but on page 2, urban electric transmission lines mean any line or extension that is at least 2.5 miles in length, traverses at least 2.5 contiguous miles through corporate limits of a city having a population of 300,000 or more, and then it gets into the voltages. So it does mention some of that, but I appreciate the discussion, and with that, I move my amendment.
Motion's been moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
No.
Would you like your votes recorded?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Carmichael would like his no vote recorded in the minutes of this meeting. Thank you.
Representative Gardner also. Okay, amendment passed. Back on the bill. Is there any other additional amendments? Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one more amendment. Enlist your help to pass it out again.
If we hand these out, would you care to explain it? Or you want Nick to explain it?
This is a quite a bit shorter one. It's on page 2, specifically line 1 and 2. It talks about the, let me just start it back here. Electric utility means any electric utility defined in KSA 66-101A and amendments there too. Electric utility does not mean a municipal utility. And with the addition here, or any, municipal utility, an electric cooperative as defined in 66104A, or an electric utility owned by one or more of those such co-ops. So essentially, we're eliminating the co-ops from this bill. And I believe there's one electric utility out there that is fully owned by a co-op. So we're just trying to lump that utility in with the co-ops. With that, I'll stand for questions.
There's a second. Representative Gardner seconded. Okay, discussion on the amendment. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite the fact that I cannot now support the principal bill as amended, this is a good amendment, and I urge its adoption. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Last call for any other questions. Any, Representative Keither. Representative Keither, did you have your hand up?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I'd like to support the amendment. I think it was a concern, and I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to, maybe if it'd be save you some steps, you could use Representative Neighbor's hand, and it might make it easier for you to get there if we could call you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on
I'm
the
sorry,
amendment?
that was Representative Kiefer using my sound.
Right. Oh, I just, when we look at who's got their hands up, it's, since she has to run maybe to her computer to put it on, I'm just saying, if she uses your hand up, then we can recognize either one of you without having to, she can stay in your office with you. Okay, back on the amendment. Is there any other questions on the Representative Depledang? You can close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pretty simple amendment. I don't know if it needs much more explanation, but I move my amendment.
All those in favor of moving the amendment as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Amendment passed. Back on the bill. Are there any other amendments? Seeing none? Any other discussion on the bill? Representative Schreiber, you may close.
I close.
All those in favorably passing HB 2321 out as amended, say aye. All those opposed?
No, I'm sorry. I apologize.
You already got it
Sorry.
recorded. It's already recorded.
I'm just in such a good mood today. I want to vote for it, but I can't.
Okay, so is this an aye? This is an aye vote right now. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign?
No.
Aye or no? Any other?
No, please, Mr. Chairman, if you do me the courtesy of recording Representative Carmichael as a negative vote at the appropriate time. Thank you.
We have that. Any others want to record it? That? HB 2321 passed out favorably as amended. Back on the hearing. Also, we have 2381. Nick, would you care to go over 2381, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and this one is probably the most recent bill on the committee's mind. This is the establishment of the State Energy Plan Task Force. In committee, I'm not going to go through all the members or anything like that, but it requires the task force to develop a state energy plan and develop recommendations for the implementation and continued short-term and long-term viability of the plan. The plan would be required to be submitted on or before January 31 of 2023 to the governor, the legislature, and the utilities committee of the Senate and this committee. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Any specific questions for Nick? Seeing none. Any amendments to this bill? Representative Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No amendment, Mr. Chair, but could I ask you a question? I mean, this bill sounds really good to me, but would it stop what happened last week? Would it help with the outages we had, like in Texas and so forth, where they had a plan that would kick in that would prevent loss of power and so forth? Would this plan help that at all?
I'm probably not the right person to answer that. I think it's more of a discussion on going forward and maybe addressing those. So I have no comment on it at this point, but anybody else? Representative Schreiber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Smith, it's my opinion it's not, this plan would not be designed to prevent outages that took place last week, such as in Texas. I think those are more operational type of issues within the specific utilities down there and how their markets are structured. This plan doesn't get into the particular operations of each utility or the power markets in that state. So I can't say it wouldn't help at all, but I think it would certainly. I think it's more the utilities or the marketers' perspective as far as how that gets helped, and the federal regulators and so forth. But hopefully that provides a little bit of an answer to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Berkowitz.
Yes, question, if I might, to Representative Schreiber as well. In your opinion, sir, does the plan give us a focused direction towards a certain type of energy plan, or is it more generic to providing an energy plan? Does it focus towards new energy sources, or is it focused towards having an overall plan?
Overall plan, I answer more like an overall plan, but as I mentioned, I think in my testimony, or maybe someone did, the new technologies that are coming on the market, that's something to explore too, to bring into Kansas so that we can attract new capital, new companies and that sort of thing and maintain the ones we have here. It's not excluding anyone, and I think you can see that by the membership on the committee, on the task force.
Thank you. And one more comment, Mr. Chair, and that is my concern that it not extinguish by group any source of energy or any type of production that's in existence simply because we've produced a plan committee that presumably could do new and wonderful things. I don't want to exclude what we're already doing in the state simply because we have a large committee to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Berquist. I think we've heard in this committee before that probably every energy source has advantages and disadvantages, and I think Kansas has done a good job over the years having diverse resources to generate their power, and I think we should keep along that path. Diversity, I think, provides some strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative.
Representative Keither.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had several phone calls when this.
Can you turn the volume down on your computer there because it's echoing and we can't understand you?
That better?
It's better.
Representative Keither, are both your computers muted? Or is I shouldn't say muted, but unmuted?
Probably there's speakers on the computer that's monitoring the committee. That's the difference between the muted and the unmuted. While we're figuring that out, Representative Mason, my favorite committee member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, not a question. Just want to go on the record as saying I do not oppose for my district a long-term energy plan, but I do have a nagging fear and worry in the back of my mind that this could be a Trojan horse for the new Green Deal or Green New Deal, and that is not a direction I would want to see it go.
Thank you for that comment. Representative Delperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to expound on what the representative across from me and the previous one said. I think we, as a state and really as a power pool overall, need a comprehensive plan moving forward. But I would like to go on record, I'm just concerned with the possible makeup and stacking this task force in one direction versus another. I'd love to see it set up where it's truly neutral, composed of people that truly know the industry. And I'm not convinced that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Keither, are you ready to try it again? Representative Neighbors. Okay, we're going to move on to Representative Carmichael, then come back to again.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate my good friend from McPherson's concern regarding this being some way to sneak in something that was dreamed up by snowflake liberals back east or maybe out on the West Coast. I don't think that's at all what we're doing here. What we're really trying to do is put Kansas on a competitive footing for capital investment with other states that do have a state energy plan. And I think we are also trying to develop a balanced energy plan. I know it may surprise some of you to hear this, but I think there's still room for fossil fuel in Kansas. Independent oil and gas production, for example, is a mainstay of our state economy. And yes, as time goes on, we will deplete those reserves of fossil fuel in Kansas. And by necessity, we will have to move to other fuel sources. But we want to be able to do that in a way that says Kansas, to borrow Sam Brownback's phrase, is open for business, for investment of capital in energy resources of all kinds, including fossil fuel. I also hope that we will realize that through a state energy plan and diversification of sources of energy, we may be able to avoid events in Kansas like we saw in the ERCOT grid in the independent Republic of Texas. So while I understand my good friend's concern that this might be an attempt by liberal democratic snowflakes to sneak something by, I don't think that's the intent. And I think if you look at the composition, there are so many folks from the energy industry that will be a part of this that it seems to me that that is something we should not be concerned about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you entertaining my remarks.
Mr. Carmichael. Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to send a shout out here to my small friend from Wichita and just say, he gets me. He really gets me.
Moving on.
Short people have no reason.
Representative Keith, I see your picture in your hand. Representative Neighbors, did you have a separate question, or are you and Annie both trying to get it through? Yeah, you could do that. Call your question into the cell phone. What number would they call? On the speaker? Okay. In the meantime, Representative Samsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the good representative from Wichita, if I may, Representative Delperdang, if he could, wouldn't mind enlightening the committee on, I couldn't glean, and not to put him on the spot, but does he support the bill in its current form with the current makeup, or is he suggesting the composition should perhaps be improved before we move the bill? If he wants to speak to that. I just wasn't sure here virtually or virally or however we want to describe it.
Well, it's either way, but Representative Delperdang.
I'd answer it if it was anyone but him, right? No, I'm going to support the bill. I just wanted to go on record that got a little bit of concern of the makeup, and it's not just this task force, but I've seen it many times on other task force in the past too. So I'm hoping they get the best people with the knowledge to make it up. That's all I was going with.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, try this. Okay, now.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to what the vice chair has said and the representative from Wichita, and I am going to say that I did not like the small remark, that I found that personally offensive. But, you know, I had a conversation with Ed Cross of Cuyahoga, who we all know, and he wanted to talk about the energy plan and how it was put together. And we had a lovely conversation, and he was at ease and that we were going to be discussing and including all types of energy sources in the discussion, which we have to do because we have a lot of most everything. Some are declining, but my gosh, you know, this is a conversation that is overdue. And to Representative Smith's concern, we certainly I think most of any changes will go along from the federal level, but certainly we all will be having a discussion about maybe what we could do better with it, with another hit from cold weather. But we're talking about including everybody, bringing everybody to the table and moving forward, which, as the Wichita representative pointed out, there are only about 8 states that don't have an energy plan. And to remind you that the study that we paid for through Senate Bill 69, the first recommendation it came out with was to create an energy plan and an office. So I think this is one way to march in the right direction, and I absolutely support this bill and ask that you do too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chairman, for making it possible.
Okay.
Okay, is Representative Neighbors, or was you cooperative with Annie on that one? I think so. Her hand's down now. Okay. Any other discussion? Representative Schreiber, are there any amendments?
Details. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment. It's fairly brief. I think Barbara has it. I'll quickly explain it. I think Nick might be able to pull that up as well on the screen. Basically, on page 2, it would, on line 27, where it talks about enhanced energy efficiency and electric vehicle infrastructure, it would say enhance energy efficiency and plan electric vehicle infrastructure as part of a comprehensive strategy for vehicle fueling infrastructure that includes biofuels, alternative fuels, and petroleum fuels. And that's the amendment. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Any questions for Representative Schreiber? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not specific to that, but in that you're a sponsor of the overall bill, what's the actionable side of this? Once this comes, is it imposed on those entities that are responsible? So when we have a situation like we did recently, we find a throat to choke, and it's not going to be the folks on this committee or the members of necessarily. So I'm just curious of that. Thank you. I'm sorry. So when this plan is developed, is it imposed on those that provide power, or how is it actionable is my question. Thank you.
So it's basically going to be, or at least what I've seen in like Iowa, Missouri, and elsewhere, are a set of recommendations and strategies for the state energy office to pursue. They could do that by offering legislation during the legislative session. They may go out and talk to a provider, say since we're on this particular amendment about electric vehicle charging stations, maybe there's a way to enhance that infrastructure and spread them out, not only in metro areas, but in rural areas as well. And these are just examples off the top of my head. But there's no anticipation, and I haven't seen it in other plans, that they create a set of mandates or requirements for utilities to follow or some other industries to follow to meet those strategies. It's kind of a guidepost instead of a baseball bat to get people to do certain things, in my opinion. At least that's the way Iowa's approached it. Missouri, I think, is the same way. They both looked at it as a way to bring in value, long-term value into the state, and keep companies here with stable energy resources.
Representative Elperdang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the Vice Chair, or to carry the amendment, where you're getting into the electric charging stations. I agree with the amendment overall, but the question I've got deals with I've still got hopes and dreams that we're going to see hydrogen play into this along with the fuel cells. Instead of sitting at a charging station for 45 minutes, you pull in, you can get your fill up with hydrogen. It powers that electric fuel cell, and you still got an electric vehicle. So would the amendment or the bill include in any of that in the studies?
It would, and that would be the term alternative fuels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to hear it. Thank you.
And this amendment, I think Mr. Stuckey referred to it in his testimony from Renew Kansas, the biofuels group here, but he also wanted to see a broad range and not just electric or just biofuels, but alternative fuels and petroleum-based fuels too.
Yeah, okay. And I'm a little focused on the hydrogen because to my knowledge, that is the most plentiful fuel source we've got, not only on the planet, but throughout the universe, really.
And there's technology that they're testing now, and so it's and not just in the U.S. but in other countries too. I know in Germany that's kind of what they're banking on, not so much electric vehicles, but hydrogen.
It's still an electric vehicle when it comes down to it. It's just powered by a fuel cell.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Power in the generator. Thank you.
Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To correct my good friend, Representative Elperdang, the largest fuel source we have in Kansas is the hot air of certain short representatives from Wichita. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did you want that mark struck across the journal?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, could I remind the fine?
We'll try to be serious, but let's.
I just wanted to remind the fine representative from Wichita that I am 6 foot, so I'm not included in that category.
Okay.
I was referring to the guy I see in the mirror.
Any other comments questions on the amendment? Second amendment? Okay. On the second now. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, Representative Schreiber, you may close.
I close.
Back on the bill. Are there any other amendments on this bill? Any discussion on this bill? I think it's, well,
I don't know if anyone hears me, but we've lost the video and audio from the committee room.
So for those of you online, I just notified the vice chair of the technical difficulties and we'll work on getting it back up.
hi. Representative Samsel?
Yes.
There we go. Are they coming back?
We hear you and see you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again.
Yes, as likewise, Representative Carmichael. Are we back on with the members of the committee that are online? Okay, Representative Schreiber, you may close on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the discussion and questions. So I would move 2381 favorably for passage as amended.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those opposed? You scare me when you do that, Carmichael.
Aye, Mr. Chairman, aye.
Okay, it's so loud. Anyway, all those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Passing bill HB 2381, favorable for
Will the
passage out.
chair please record my affirmative vote?
As a nay?
As an aye, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Just
This is
checking.
good legislation, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm not used to you voting in the aye favor sitting there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Come sign my gavel. Okay. We are adjourned till further notice.